Thank you for having us today. I think this has been a really interesting debate, but I think we've really been sidetracked, and especially with the last speaker. I want to do a little refutation and get into my extension, which I really think is going to get this at the heart of the debate, which is where it should really be. But going in reverse, not all terrorists are bad. I'm going to disagree with that. I'm going to show that with my positive matter. The Taliban is more supported because they allow poppy seed production, which most poppy farmers appreciate in rural areas. And then really with this Egyptian IRA terrorism, who is a terrorism, I'm going to define that in my positive matter. But I think the United States federal government has a pretty easy and clear defined rules on who we consider terrorism and what rules with that. And I think on this side that we can use those commonly defined federal guidelines with who we charge with terrorist activities, with treason, or what have you, when acts are committed against the United States or foreign government. So, and in democratic, fair, peaceful societies like ours, I think that we can easily define who a terrorist is. We're not talking, we're not having Tea Party revolutions where they're shooting the government, thankfully. And then let me continue on. So why uniquely to the country, she asked, why the U.S. and then why citizenship? I'm going to answer all those in my point of positive matter. So I'm going to start with Najib Ullah Z is a guy that was, excuse me for saying that so wrongly, but he was plotting with Al-Qaeda to bomb in September 2009. He was born in Afghanistan and came to New York and worked at a food cart. Now he went back to Afghanistan to work with the Taliban against the United States military to kill troops. Now we consider that terrorism in the United States definition. We think we can both accept that, and we are going to say under this plan that it's acceptable for the Afghanistan government, which we support, attempt to support, have democratic election and fair judicial system. We can say that we could revoke his citizenship if he earned it, if he got it within his time here in New York, and then that we can have a fair judicial trial in New York. That's what the government over here is talking about. We think that this is a fair system. Why do you think that's a problem?
Well, first off, they're not talking about that. They're talking about having a trial back in that other home country. And again, what opening government said is that we're basing this off of the laws in that home country, not the laws of the United States. So you are preaching two different definitions on the government side. Let's get it straight.
We're the same message here. They said that they're going to revoke the citizenship if they have dual citizenship. And if this person, and I'm talking about in America, goes back to Afghanistan and commits terrorism, we can support both rules. We can revoke our citizenship. They can revoke the citizenship there if they choose to. But they're going to have the trial there, or we can have it here. We can extradite them, which this side apparently has a problem with extradition, which we don't know why. And then except the cases of the Egyptian freedom fighters, the United States still has rules about those kind of people. If they're dissidents fighting for their life and they're going to be killed when they get extradited, well, we can send people back to Afghanistan if they have fair judicial systems, which we think they do, because we help set up their government. Let me get into some point of positive matter. Our other great example is a Long Islander, so another New York example, named Bryant Neal Vanas, who was arrested in July 2009. He was training with Al-Qaeda in Pakistan, trying to rocket troops kill U.S. troops. Another example where we think this form of government has a good plan that we think is okay. We think John Walker Lind, we think that who was tried here in America, because we were extradited him back, if we think Afghanistan, there's terrorists going out of Afghanistan and killing people in Pakistan, and they happen to be U.S. troops, or they had to be U.S. citizens, and they came back to America, we think we might respect Pakistan enough under our policy to support Pakistan actually prosecuting. So we actually do have solvency in this plan, and we think that it works. So I really, I'm running out of time, but I want to talk about how citizenship is extremely important. We give people citizens because we believe in them. And so when they cause terrorism, when they commit the intent to cause mass terror, which we think is defined on this side pretty fairly. I mean, we think that in the society that we have now today, it's pretty well defined on when we charge someone with a terrorist activity or when we charge someone with treason. What is the core of it? It's an absolute betrayal of an identity of the person's country. So we think that terrorism is so high that it's acceptable to revoke their citizenship in either place. This side over here has such big questions about why we're doing it in one place or the other. We think that citizenship can be revoked when you're talking about treason. That's why you execute for treason, because it's so high of a benchmark that you're attacking your country so well. And we think terrorism is at that same level. And I'll take one more point.
We think it might be a good idea to take away the citizenship of a person who committed a terrorist act in Afghanistan, who has citizenship in Afghanistan, but under the model that has been proposed, we are only talking about revoking U.S. citizenship that was said by the Prime Minister.
Okay, So I don't think that I don't think it matters. I think that we're on the same thing. I think that we're supporting the resolution over here, and I think that we have a good plan that it works. So as I just talked about, why citizenship? Because it's, citizenship uniquely believes in their citizens. This violates it when someone commits the act of terrorism. We think we solve for these harms, which we absolutely think there's harms. If someone commits terrorism, we think it's a high enough cause to take away their citizenship. What is citizenship? We had questions about that. We think citizenship gives people rights, right? Constitutional protections, usually in most countries, which includes, First Amendment, all the 10 amendments, voting rights, jury duty. Foreign nationals don't get the same rights in a nation, which is why they're treated usually differently. And we think that this is a fair standard. The last example I wanted to give you is Adam Gadala, who left the United States and became a cultural interpreter for Al-Qaeda. Yet again, I think this is a fair example of what happens here, that we think that it's fair to have, whether or not it's extradition, they can debate that, but it's the same system, is that we're going to respect other countries if they commit crimes in those countries, and they will respect us in return. We think that's a fair thing. So the last point, and kind of this was my main extension, but we think that there's a huge issue of like birthright citizenship, terrorism. We think that if people like the 9/11 hijackers who came over here or Saudi Arabians, if they became citizens here beforehand and then went back to Afghanistan instead of attacking the World Trade Center, they went to Afghanistan and blew up our troops in Afghanistan, we think it would be fair to have our citizenship that revoked and then send them to Afghanistan where they committed the crime and then prosecute them in that country, which we support because they're a peace partner in our mission to root out the Taliban, which we do not support. So what do we do for you today? We think that we have a fair plan on the government. We think that citizenship is a high enough crime that you can revoke it if there is cases of terrorism. I've defined you for terrorism that I think is acceptable for both sides. I've defined you why citizenship is so especially important. I've given you some examples that I think supports our case over here, even though this side doesn't understand it. And we think that all countries that will benefit under this plan, which is why you should vote for us today. Thank you.